Okay, Bellator.
Yeah. I mean, first of all,
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, I really enjoyed jumping on BBC iPlayer the day after and being able to watch it.
It feels
very cool.
It feels comfortably legit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That it's like,
it's the BBC, young man.
Sit down and watch the BBC. Bellator on the BBC.
It was great. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, I enjoyed the card and I enjoyed being able to jump on iPlayer and watch it.
Yeah.
Big move for Bellator, I think that is. Big move over here.
Big move.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there were some good matchups anyway. I was interested to see what Usman Nurmagomedov looked like. But Pitbull he's very, very good.
He's very good, isn't he?
He's very good. And I was interested because the first fight again with Emmanuel Sanchez was competitive. You know, there was Sanchez caught Pitbull with one of those shots kind of around the ear.
Yeah.
That doesn't knock you out, but it just switches your lower body off.
Bone's gone.
Yeah, and it was a competitive fight, but then this time around it was
beautiful time, left hook right.
Yeah,
and then left hook did the damage and squeezed him to death. Yeah, very good. He's
How do you see him competing with other featherweights like UFC featherweights?
Well,
can you see it?
I mean, the reference point is obviously Mike Chandler, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got that as your level finder, he must go in pretty good.
I think so. I'd be interested to see him mix it up.
I wonder how I'd go with the top level strikers, particularly in that weight class.
I mean, if you're looking at fights that'd be interesting, someone like a Barbosa or a Jeremy Stevens, someone that's been around that we know.
Yeah,
I'd like to see him in there against. But I mean, there's other rising guys. I mean, AJ McKee's very good anyway. And obviously that's the next fight. But that's for
£1 million, isn't it? $1 million, sorry. $1 million. $1
million.
Prize fight.
I love it.
Love it.
I like it. They should hang it in a bag above the cage while the fights are happening.
Yeah, or explode it out of a cannon at the end.
They bring a ladder in for the winner to go and get it.
Yeah, no, he's very good, wasn't he?
What about Jeremy Jackson?
Oh, man.
And he's...
To be honest... That eye scrape down the fence. When you saw it in slow mo, you could literally see his eye jolt off each one of the cage squares.
Yeah.
That was not very nice. But you see the cut at the end.
Yeah,
it would feel like your eyeball was falling out, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it just make you nervous about taking more shots on it as well. Like of all things, there are two things: your brain and your eyes. They're the two things, really. Yeah. I mean, you can have teeth replaced and your nose can be all crooked.
You can't tough that out, can you?
Can't, no.
No, it's funny. It wasn't funny at all. But when it happened, it pauses people, doesn't it? Like he just paused.
Yeah.
And then obviously Newman took advantage of that.
It was super quick with that underhook, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fight in itself wasn't necessarily a standout, was it?
I've only watched it once.
Yeah, relatively close. No, I only watched it once.
How did you score it? Did you have it for Jackson?
Just, but it was, it was close enough that you could probably make an argument either way, control and damage, and I thought he probably just about edged it. The problem is I just, not necessarily from a judge's point of view, but from a personal bias, just controlling's like, you're not going to get that off me. Just controlling people, you're not going to get the win off me. But
it's interesting that since the scoring criteria has changed, that the judges have swayed like a lot heavier towards grappling. I mean, I watched UFC 35, I think it was, because it was at the Mohegan Sun, which is where the Raptors have been on the weekend. And I messaged Mystery, and I was like, this is an iconic place. Like the Mohegan Sun is an iconic arena. Like there were a lot of early UFC events that were held there and stuff. And so I went back and watched that first event, and like even the way it's listed in the scoring back then is effective striking, grappling, followed by aggression and octagon control. I mean, it was always weighted in that direction, but in those old days, people would play more towards grab a takedown, hold the fight to the floor, beat them up a little bit, and like
it was so dominant, wasn't it? Like we just, the sport didn't have answers for that at all. And I know sometimes you have fights now where guys are just outmatched and they can't get off the back no matter and you would think they should have answers to that by now, but that's wrestling. That's why wrestling is the core sport for everything to work off, really, isn't it?
It's still the glue though, isn't it? The only thing you can weaponize about wrestling is the fatigue element.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm not going to interrupt you. Carry on with what you're saying because I'm getting some heat about this again.
I always feel like I'm interrupting you though, which doesn't make any sense. I think this is
how people have conversations, right? Is you're always sort of half interrupting each other.
Maybe you're just supposed to sit there and listen to me talk.
Well, like I say, you've got a monologue show.
I mean, I know there, I know there are people that are going to disagree with me, like people that are in wrestling that are like, oh no, wrestling has its submissions, etc., etc. But like the sport of wrestling, it doesn't. I mean, it's about control. And like one of my favourite documentaries, I used to watch it all the time in training camp, was Competitor Supreme about Dan Gable. And that whole thing was just work so hard that they can't keep up.
Yeah.
Like work them off the mat. And that's the part you weaponize about it. You still need it's a precursor to a finish.
I definitely, you know what I mean? I definitely think I've watched a couple recently where people have started weaponizing wrestling fatigue. Like they'll feel like they're being outstruck. They'll take them to the fence and they'll build some fatigue into them, and then by the time they come back out, everything's just leveled up a little bit because you just can't execute at the same speed.
But it's like there were times, there were fights like back in MMA history that. Like that happened in a fight, and now that fight signifies that tactic. So, like when you say that to me, my first thought is GSP against BJ Penn 2,
right?
Because the first time he got lit up, like his face was a bloody mess at the end of that first round, and it was down to sheer determination and conditioning that got him through the next 2 rounds and was able to get the win. The second time around, it was like, I'm not letting you do that again.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not standing at a boxing range.
Have some of this wrestling fatigue.
And like by the time BJ was at the end of that first round, it was just done.
Yeah.
Just done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a smart play. What will be, obviously neither of us have been in American collegiate programs, but it would be interesting to see what the dropout rate, like who, by the time you've got your wrestling team, what was the dropout rate from what you started from? You had 500 people wanting to do wrestling, and you end up with 15. Like those 15 of, they're super durable, and they have a mental and physical tolerance for just work.
Yeah.
That you probably couldn't train that into people. It's more like the strongest survive in those sort of programs. And like the stories you hear of those programs, like not many are surviving that.
No.
If you get that singlet, you earn that singlet.
Yeah, and things are much nicer now, from what I understand, than they were back in the Dan Gable days.
No doubt. No doubt.
Like, I thoroughly enjoyed that documentary. If you've not watched Competitor Supreme, go and check it out, because it's just like he's molding these monsters, and when they go to a tournament, there's no doubt every single one of them is going to lose.
There's a little bit of arrogance about wrestlers in MMA, isn't there? Like they know they can compete.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing, you can't throw anything at us that I haven't worked through, because I know how to compete.
But the thing is, like when you're good at manhandling somebody that's your size, when you can. I know this is a bit of a weird tangent, but it was like I was watching this the pirate documentary that's just been added onto Netflix.
Watching it, yeah,
it's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really good.
When they were talking about I can't remember the dude's name now. That like the pirate that was a bully, like he was so brutal that he figured out how to make people do what he wanted.
Yeah.
And he just ruled the show because of that.
Name in time.
No, I can't remember his name.
I can see his face now off that thing. So that documentary is the same. It's the same story as Black Sails.
It is.
It's exactly the same.
I said that to
and
V
all the
yesterday.
references are the same, because obviously they're telling the same story, but it's done in almost like a documentary form.
Yeah,
isn't it? It's worth a watch. It's good.
I watched
really
the first 2 episodes. I enjoyed it, but it's like just that mentality of I walk into a place and I'm so confident because I know I can make people do what I want. It's like Ben Askren said to Jake Paul, and it was a weird way of saying it. It was a really weird. He was like, "What did he say? Do a homicide?
Yeah.
Do you do a homicide?
Yeah, but Jake knows that I can do a homicide on him.
That's the least ghetto way of talking possible.
I do get what you mean. Yeah,
that's a white guy.
And I mean, it is
kind of way of saying it.
It is true. The rules of boxing are going to protect Jake.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much so.
Exactly, because like no matter how good Jake Paul is at boxing, if it was a fight, Ben Askren would be able to manhandle him to a point where he'd be so tired he wouldn't be able to stop Ben Askren beating him up.
No, and I mean, I can't imagine Jake's been thrown on his head recently. He's not going to know what that feels like to be inverted and and driven into the floor. So, yeah.
But
it's I was sorry. No, you go. No, honestly, you go.
But it's like that confidence though of like you stand and you look at someone, you're like, I can just manhandle you.
But I always feel that you guys with elite striking must feel like that. It'd be like any fight. All I need is one. I know what these can do. You know what I mean? You probably do. Yeah. But
then, like in a grappling sense, like we've been fortunate enough to roll with some amazing grapplers, and you feel that when you roll. Like Paul Barton said it the other week. He was talking about rolling with Dan Strauss, and he said he was like at the end of it, I just kind of asked myself whether we're doing the same thing. It's like what, like how is it that you know the same things that I know, but I can't compete with what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said it to you before. It's like someone shouting you in fluent Japanese. You're just like, what?
Yeah.
I recognise a little bit of what you're saying to me, but that's about it.
Yeah.
That's just levels. It's an overused term now, and there's levels to this game, but there is just levels to everything.
For sure. Did you watch the heavyweights, Tyrell Fortune?
No.
Mate,
no.
It was between Usman Nurmagomedov and Jason Jackson. Came out, hit Jeremy May with this wicked takedown, and just mauled him on the floor.
Yeah,
just mauled him on the floor. And I'm not exactly. It was a little bit like Jeremy May owed the referee money because he was killed up in a ball for a good while.
Yeah, right. I mean, I like that. I like that ability to impart that on someone. Because the wrestling art it has a bit of a negative connotation in some ways, in that you'll get took down and people just lie on you. They'll lie on that half guard and not do any real damage. But that's not the same. Mm-mm. Like the Khabib thing, like taking down and he just maul you into submission.
Yeah.
Like you'd rather get choked than let this carry on, because it's just so miserable. You can't get up. Every time you start getting up, they break you down, and you get elbowed and hammer fisted, and the head's up in your chest and your chin. It's just a horrible place to be in it. Like I like that. That's a great skill to be able to impart on another human.
See, that's the bit why I don't understand when you see someone that's a good wrestler and they just use wrestling.
Yeah,
that's the bit I don't understand, is because like I said a bit ago, like wrestling's a precursor to a finish. But as you know, like, it's funny enough, V said this earlier today, and it's just jumped into my mind. I was watching a fight with two high-level grapplers, and the commentator said, "Oh, we really want to see how these two match up on the floor." And V said, "If that was a grappling match, though, no one would be interested in watching it."
Yeah, right.
Right. The difference is that we've got two grapplers that can now punch each other in the face. Like if you're up against a good grappler, you'll find yourself in positions where you're thankful they're not punching you in the face.
Yeah.
Right?
Safe zones.
So like if you're a grappler or a wrestler, punching someone should make it easier to control them, because it makes them less
but then the flip side is, to punch them you have to create space, which is your enemy in grappling's, and you're always trying to certainly attacking, you're always trying to close space.
Yeah.
So to strike, you're gonna have to make space, which obviously opens up avenues out of positions, I suppose.
Which shows that you're more interested in maintaining control than you are about finding a finish.
Yeah.
Which is why the judging criteria is swayed in that direction.
Yeah. But then it's like that comparison is, it's less about grappling, it's more about who's adapted better. So you might have two great grapplers, but who's adapted this to be able to impart damage instead of purely control.
Yeah, but like being a good grappler is kind of like having good footwork in a lot of ways. Being a good wrestler is like having good footwork. Like the only difference is that with one aspect of control, you're in physical contact with the person, and then the other aspect of control, you're not. Which is why people don't really understand and appreciate footwork the way that they should. Like wrestling, everyone's like, "Oh, okay, that's the glue of MMA," but it's still just a method of control. Like the end result, whether it's striking or fatiguing someone to make them more vulnerable and submitting them, or just catching a submission when they're dry, like they're the finishers. Controlling someone with wrestling is controlling someone with footwork. If you're so good at controlling someone with footwork, you should be able to instigate a finish. If you're so good at controlling someone with wrestling, you should at least be able to work towards a finish.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Wrestling should be a conduit for a finish, right? It should be positioning yourself to inflict something that can finish the fight.
But then the problem is, like, where is that line? Because, like Neiman Gracie had a lot of good positions on Jason Jackson. Like, he had his back, had him flattened out. Like, how close to a knockdown do you score those positions? Like, how close to...
Like, if you've got them flattened out, you should be inflicting some damage. Like, just getting them flattened out, that's sort of missing the point.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the change in MMA. I think people are going to start to have this realization soon, and instead of getting in there, taking someone down and chasing submissions over and over again, I think they're going to start utilizing that control to do damage and fatigue the person. And
take the sub if it's there.
Yeah.
If they opt out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kano Watanabe.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We were chatting about her earlier. I trained with her in Japan.
Yeah.
And she's the single strongest female I've ever come across.
Really?
Yeah. Incredibly strong.
She flyweight 125.
Really strong at 125.
So you got like a 20-pound weight advantage on her then?
And a bit. Back then, I was in shape back then, a bit more.
Back then when you were in shape.
Yeah, look, I thought she looked she's a bit rudimentary with her striking. We've said a few times, people who strike like a grappler. She clearly strikes like a grappler.
Yeah.
But
she's got some judo though.
She got a bit of judo.
I'll tell you what, she was backed up in the first round, early in the first round as well. Took a couple of shots, and out of nowhere she went outside reap and just slammed her opponent. She messed up a
couple of trips though, which I thought was uncharacteristic of someone that had been in that sport for so long. I think she messed up a lateral hip toss. I noticed it because it was the same thing. Adesanya tried it in a fight earlier in a different fight, and it made DC couldn't stop laughing on the commentary.
Yeah.
He was like, "That's not how you do that." I love that he's got the confidence to do it, but that is not how you do that.
Yeah. But then you got to think, even in judo, there are different styles. Like coming from Taekwondo, my style wasn't the stand on the outside with my hands down and bap, loads and loads of kicks off the same leg.
Yeah.
Like, I'd step in with a hard kick to follow up with another hard kick. And it's like, so her style in judo might have been much more upper body control and foot sweeps and trips and less loading onto her hip. Because there were a lot of times when she was doing really well in the clinch where she was manipulating her opponent's movement with like a foot sweep or a trip, or even baiting her with one trip to get her to step and then getting her with something else. Yeah,
she got the win. I thought it was pretty close. She was getting.
Lara was good though.
Yeah, she
striking was
good.
Yeah. Just a little bit too aggressive.
If she managed that distance better, she'd have won that fight, wouldn't she? You can't overcommit when you've got a national representative judoka in front of you. Yeah, it was fun. Good fight. Fun card all over, really.
Well, we've not talked about Usman Nurmagomedov, have we?
Oh.
Did you watch it?
Yeah. I thought it was great. He's just
pretty slick, isn't he?
Stoic, efficient, like almost like faceless, isn't he? He just goes about his business.
You know what's interesting is that there's like this other group that are coming, like the second generation after Khabib, have all got really good striking as well.
Yeah.
Like Usman Nurmagomedov, Abu Bakr. What's the other kid as well that fought the other week? He's got really good taekwondo striking.
He doesn't even like engage the wrestle, does he? Until he has to. I can't remember his name.
Does he not train out of Mark Henry's gym though? I think he's on that side, on that coast, I think. Anyway, but there are a bunch of them from that team that are all coming through with like more traditional like taekwondo skills almost.
Very slick striking.
Yeah. Like southpaw, almost like very kind of European style long range boxing, but with that lead leg that they just lift up and keep snapping out.
No, he was good. He's got nice counters with his kicks, well, doesn't he? Really nice. It's probably better than I'd sort of seen for a while.
Yeah,
just sort of stood out a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, Hamill was tough, right? He was outmatched, and he hung in there,
stuck in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to see him progress though.
I think he's going to get better and better. He's just it's just tip of the iceberg, really.
Yeah. I mean, he's tall as well, isn't he? Is he like 5'11"?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good event.
Very good.
Shall we get on to this weekend?
Yeah.